Maya Torres's fingers trembled with exhaustion as she held her phone above Lily's face, trying to capture the moment that had taken 3 weeks of patient encouragement to achieve. The afternoon light filtered through the thin curtains of her modest apartment, casting a gentle glow across the worn carpet where her 6-month-old daughter sat upright for the first time, completely unassisted. Lily's amber eyes sparkled with pride, her dimpled smile wide and triumphant, as though she understood the magnitude of her accomplishment. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. That's it, baby girl, Maya whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. The camera clicked once, twice, capturing the image that would change everything. Lily wobbled slightly, her chubby arms extending for balance, but she held steady. Maya's chest swelled with a fierce mixture of pride and exhaustion. She had done this alone, every sleepless night, every anxious doctor's visit, every milestone reached without a partner to share the burden or the joy. Her laptop screen glowed behind her, a half-finished logo design bleeding past its deadline. The client had already sent 2 reminder emails, but Maya could not bring herself to care about corporate branding when her daughter was achieving miracles on a Tuesday afternoon. She typed quickly, her thumbs moving across the screen with practiced efficiency despite the fog of sleep deprivation that had become her constant companion. Can't believe she's already sitting up. Time flies when you're doing this alone. The message was meant for Jade, her younger sister, who had been checking in daily with encouraging texts and promises to visit soon. Maya's vision blurred slightly as she scrolled through her contacts, her exhaustion making everything feel dreamlike and distant. She tapped what she thought was Jade's name and pressed send before she could second-guess the vulnerable admission that she was struggling. The message disappeared into the digital ether. Maya set her phone down and reached for Lily, scooping her daughter into her arms and pressing kisses across her soft cheeks. "You're getting so big," she murmured against Lily's wispy hair. "So strong and brave, just like your mama." It was not until an hour later, when Maya had finally settled Lily down for an afternoon nap and returned to her abandoned logo design, that her phone began buzzing with responses. She glanced at the screen, expecting Jade's enthusiastic reply, but instead saw a name she had not thought about in months. Former colleagues from Blake Industries, people she had worked alongside before her pregnancy, made the corporate environment unbearable, before she had quietly resigned and disappeared into the anonymous world of freelance design. "Congratulations, Maya. Didn't know you had a baby. Wow, she's beautiful. Who's the lucky father? Is this meant for the executive chat?" The blood drained from Maya's face as realization crashed over her like ice water. Her fingers fumbled with the phone, pulling up the message thread, and her worst fear materialized before her eyes. The Blake Industries executive group chat, a relic from her days as the company's junior graphic designer, invited to monitor conversations for branding purposes. She had forgotten she was even part of it, had silenced the notifications months ago when the pinging reminders of her old life became too painful to bear. "No, no, no," she breathed, frantically trying to delete the message. But the damage was done. The read receipts stacked up like dominoes falling. 23 people had seen it. 23 executives, board members, and department heads now had a window into her private life, into the secret she had carried alone for 18 months. Her hands shook as she finally managed to delete the message, but she knew it was futile. Screenshots lived forever, and gossip traveled faster than light in corporate circles. She pressed her palm against her mouth, fighting the rising panic that threatened to choke her. What had she done? Across the city, in the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor of Blake Tower, Ethan Blake sat at the head of an oval table surrounded by 12 of the most powerful executives in the tech industry. The merger deal spread before them represented 18 months of negotiations, $50 million in capital exchange, and the future trajectory of Blake Industries. His presentation was flawless, each slide advancing with perfect timing as he outlined projected growth, market penetration, and strategic advantages. "The synergy between our software infrastructure and their distribution network creates an unprecedented opportunity," Ethan explained, his voice carrying the calm authority that had built his reputation. He moved through the data with precision, answering questions before they were fully formed, anticipating concerns with prepared solutions. This was his element, the place where he excelled, where emotion had no currency and logic reigned supreme. His phone buzzed against the polished mahogany table. He ignored it, continuing his presentation without missing a beat. The device buzzed again, more insistent this time, and he noticed several other phones lighting up around the table. The executive group chat, probably someone sharing an article or asking about scheduling. It could wait, but something made him glance down during a pause in his presentation. Perhaps it was instinct, or perhaps it was the way Marcus Webb, his chief technology officer and best friend, had gone perfectly still across the table, staring at his own phone with an expression of stunned disbelief. Ethan picked up his phone, unlocking it with a practiced swipe. The image filled his screen, and time fractured. Everything else, the merger, the executives, the carefully constructed. Carmen moved quietly toward the door, pausing to squeeze Maya's shoulder. "I'll be next door if you need me," she murmured in Spanish, and then she was gone, giving them privacy for a conversation 18 months overdue. The following week unfolded like a dream sequence, surreal and disjointed. Ethan began appearing at Maya's apartment every morning at 7, dressed in progressively more casual clothing, as though shedding his CEO persona one button-down shirt at a time. He arrived with offerings, groceries, diapers, a new coffee maker to replace the one that had died 2 months ago, but never with the kind of overwhelming excess that would feel like condescension. He seemed to understand instinctively that Maya needed partnership, not charity. But his sudden schedule disruption sent shockwaves through the carefully ordered world he had left behind. Victoria Ashford noticed first. She cornered him in his penthouse on Thursday evening, letting herself in with the key he had given her months ago during their carefully orchestrated courtship. She found him on the floor of his living room, surrounded by parenting books from the library, highlighter in hand like a student cramming for finals. "You've been avoiding me," she said without preamble, her designer heels clicking against marble as she approached. Victoria was beautiful in the way of old money, elegant, composed, every hair in place. They had known each other since childhood, their families moving in the same rarefied circles. The engagement, though not yet publicly announced, had been understood as inevitable by everyone who mattered. Ethan looked up from a chapter on sleep training, and Victoria saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Distance. Not the comfortable distance of their usual arrangement, but the kind of distance that came before goodbye. "There's a child," he said simply. Victoria sank onto the leather sofa, her composure slipping. "I heard rumors. The photo in the group chat. Is it true? Her name is Lily." Ethan's voice softened on the name. "She's 6 months old, and she has my eyes. My grandmother's eyes." "And the mother?" "Maya." The way he said her name carried weight Victoria had never heard in his voice when he spoke of her. "Someone I met before my father died. I didn't know about the pregnancy. She tried to reach me, but..." He stopped, shook his head. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is that I have a daughter, and I've already missed too much." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying the man she had agreed to marry. She saw the truth written clearly across his features. This was not a scandal to be managed, or a. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Complication to be resolved. This was a fundamental shift, a before and after dividing his life into pieces that could never be reassembled in their original configuration. "You're in love with her," Victoria said. It was not a question. Ethan met her gaze steadily. "I don't know yet, but I need to find out." The relief that washed through Victoria shocked her with its intensity. She had liked Ethan well enough, respected him certainly, but love had never factored into their arrangement. Their engagement was strategic, beneficial, expected. She thought of Helena, her business partner, whose texts made her smile in ways Ethan's never had. Helena, who understood her in ways that transcended family obligation and social expectation. "Then you should," Victoria said quietly. "Find out, I mean." Ethan looked at her with something like gratitude. The engagement was never going to work anyway. She offered him a small, genuine smile. "I'll handle the social fallout. You handle your family." But handling family proved more complicated than either of them anticipated. Diane Blake descended upon the situation with the precision of a military campaign. She appeared at the Blake Industries offices on Friday morning, summoning her son to an emergency meeting with the kind of imperious tone that had terrorized junior executives for 3 decades. Ethan arrived to find not just his mother, but James Porter and 3 other senior board members, their faces grave with concern. "We need to discuss your recent behavior," James began without preamble. "The canceled merger meeting has cost us significant credibility. Our partners are reconsidering their position, and rumors are circulating." "There's a child," Ethan interrupted, the same words he had given Victoria. Diane Blake, elegant and imposing in Chanel, did not flinch. "So I've heard. And what do you intend to do about it?" "Be her father." "That's not a strategy, Ethan. That's an emotion." His mother's voice carried the crisp disappointment that had shaped his entire childhood. "This girl, this Maya, she worked here as a presentation." All of it dissolved into meaningless noise. He stared at the photograph of a baby, a girl with a dimpled smile and eyes that mirrored his own with impossible precision. Those eyes, amber flecked with gold, were his grandmother's eyes, a genetic marker so rare that his mother had framed his childhood photographs specifically to showcase them. They had been passed down through 3 generations of Blake family members, appearing in perhaps 1 child out of every dozen births. The caption cut through him like a blade. "Time flies when you're doing this alone." The math assembled itself in his mind with brutal efficiency. 6 months old. That meant conception approximately 15 months ago, maybe a bit longer accounting for early birth. 18 months ago, he had attended a company retreat in the mountains, one of those mandatory team-building exercises his mother insisted on. There had been a woman there, a junior designer with dark hair and quick wit, whose laughter had caught his attention during a ridiculous trust fall exercise. Maya. Her name surfaced from memory like a treasure recovered from deep water. They had talked by the fire after everyone else had gone to bed, sharing stories and secrets with the kind of reckless honesty that only comes with late-night darkness and the anonymity of temporary escape from daily life. One night. They had one night together, intense and unexpected, where he had felt more like himself than he had in years. And then the call had come at dawn. His father, massive heart attack, unconscious in the hospital. Ethan had left without saying goodbye, without getting her number, pulled away by crisis and grief into a nightmare that had consumed the following months. The funeral, the company chaos, the desperate scramble to keep everything from collapsing. When he had finally tried to find her weeks later, he learned she had resigned. No forwarding address, no personal contact information, just a professional ghost vanishing from the corporate directory. He had convinced himself it was just a beautiful memory, a single night of authenticity in a life curated by others. But this child, this baby girl with his eyes staring back at him through a phone screen, was undeniable truth incarnate. "Mr. Blake," one of the executives was speaking, his voice distant and concerned. "Are you all right?" Ethan stood, the motion abrupt and graceless. Every eye in the room turned toward him, confusion rippling through the carefully orchestrated meeting. Marcus half rose from his chair, alarm evident in his expression, but Ethan was already moving toward the door. "This meeting is postponed," he said, his voice rough with something he could not name. "Indefinitely." But the merger, James Porter, the senior board member, began to protest. "Postponed." Ethan did not look back. His hand found the door handle, and he strode through it, leaving behind $50 million and 12 bewildered executives. His heart hammered against his ribs as he stabbed at his phone, pulling up every database, every contact, every resource he had access to. He needed an address, a phone number, anything that would lead him to Maya Torres. Behind him, Marcus scrambled to follow, but Ethan was already at the elevator, his composed facade crumbling with every passing second. The elevator doors closed on the chaos erupting in his wake, on the urgent questions and concerned calls, on the life he had been living since his father's death. All of it felt suddenly, urgently irrelevant compared to the truth captured in a single photograph. A daughter. He had a daughter, and Maya had been doing it alone. 24 hours after the photograph detonated across Maya's life, she stood at her apartment window, watching the street below with mounting dread. She had not slept. Lily had sensed her mother's anxiety and fussed through the night, requiring constant comfort that Maya provided on autopilot, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. Would he deny it? Would he sue for custody? Would he try to buy her silence? She had lived the past 18 months building a fragile peace around the assumption that Ethan Blake would never know, never care, never disrupt the small world she had constructed for herself and her daughter. Now that assumption lay shattered on her apartment floor like broken glass, cutting with every step. Carmen Rodriguez had arrived at dawn, letting herself in with the spare key Maya had given her months ago. The older woman took one look at Maya's haunted expression and immediately began brewing coffee, her movements efficient and comforting in their familiarity. "Tell me," she said simply, and Maya did, the whole story spilling out between sips of too hot coffee. Carmen listened without judgment, her weathered hands folded around her own mug, her dark eyes sharp with protective concern. "He will come," Carmen said when Maya finished. It was not a question, but a certainty. Men like that do not leave loose ends. Maya's hands trembled around her coffee cup. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You are never ready for truth, Mija. But it comes anyway." The expensive car pulled up to the curb at 10:37 a.m. Maya knew it was him before the driver's door opened, knew it from the sleek black paint and tinted windows that screamed wealth and power. Her breath caught as Ethan emerged, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. He paused on the sidewalk, looking up at her building with the kind of hesitation that seemed foreign to a man of his reputation. Bobby Martinez intercepted him in the lobby. Maya could not hear the conversation, but she watched through her window as the building superintendent, still wearing his maintenance uniform, positioned himself between Ethan and the stairwell with crossed arms and an expression that brooked no argument. Bobby had been asking too many questions since the photo incident, his protective instincts on high alert. Former Marine, combat veteran, he was not easily intimidated by expensive suits and corporate titles. The conversation seemed tense, Bobby gesturing sharply while Ethan remained still, hands visible, posture non-threatening. Minutes stretched like hours until finally, reluctantly, Bobby stepped aside and pointed toward the stairs. Ethan nodded once, removed his sunglasses, and began to climb. Maya's doorbell rang 3 times, polite and measured. She stood frozen in her living room, Carmen's steady presence at her elbow the only thing keeping her grounded. "Breathe," Carmen murmured. "Just breathe." Maya opened the door. Ethan Blake stood in her dingy hallway, looking impossibly out of place against the peeling wallpaper and flickering fluorescent lights. Up close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the shadows under eyes she had once known intimately. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 18 months of absence and assumptions. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was rough, stripped of the polished authority she remembered from company meetings. There was no accusation in the question, only raw confusion and pain. Maya's fingernails dug into her palms. "You left without a word. What was I supposed to think? My father died." The words came out harsh, defensive. "That morning. Heart attack. I got the call at 5 a.m., and I left. Everything fell apart, and by the time I could breathe again, you were gone." The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. She had constructed an entire narrative in her mind, one where he had ghosted her, where their night together had meant nothing to him. But grief. She understood grief intimately, knew how it could swallow everything in its path. "I tried to reach you," she said quietly. "Through the company. Multiple times. Your assistants blocked me every time. Said you weren't taking personal calls, that all communications needed to go through proper channels." The memory still stung, the humiliation of being dismissed as just another opportunist trying to reach the grieving CEO. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I didn't know. God, I didn't know." He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she recognized. "I looked for you. After the funeral, after things stabilized, I tried to find you. But you had resigned, and HR wouldn't give me any information. I thought," he stopped, shook his head. "I thought you didn't want to be found." Carmen cleared her throat softly from inside the apartment, reminding them both that they were not alone. Maya stepped back, opening the door wider in silent invitation. Ethan entered cautiously, his expensive shoes loud against her cheap laminate flooring. His gaze swept across the small space, taking in the thrift store furniture, the baby toys scattered across the carpet, the laptop balanced precariously on the coffee table, surrounded by design sketches and empty coffee cups. She's sleeping, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. She usually naps around this time. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Lily began to fuss from the bedroom, the soft sounds escalating into full crying. Maya moved on instinct, but Ethan followed, his presence overwhelming in the small hallway. She entered the nursery, really just a corner of her bedroom sectioned off with a folding screen, and lifted Lily from her crib, bouncing gently to soothe her. When she turned, Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his face transformed by wonder and fear in equal measure. Lily's crying had quieted to hiccuping breaths, her amber eyes, his eyes, wide and alert as she studied the stranger with the kind of unguarded curiosity unique to infants. The physical resemblance was undeniable. Even Carmen, who had followed them to stand witness, inhaled sharply at the sight of father and daughter together for the first time. "May I?" Ethan's voice cracked on the question. His hands were already reaching forward, trembling slightly. Maya hesitated only a moment before stepping closer, transferring Lily's weight into his unpracticed arms. She watched him adjust his grip, supporting the baby's head with awkward care, his entire body rigid with the fear of doing it wrong. Lily seemed to sense his nervousness and responded with a dimpled smile, one tiny hand reaching up to pat his cheek with uncoordinated affection. Ethan Blake, billionaire CEO, ruthless businessman, broke. His eyes filled with tears that he did not try to hide, spilling down his cheeks as he stared at his daughter with an expression of such raw emotion that Maya felt her own defenses crumbling. This was not the cold dismissal she had feared, not the denial or the demands. This was a man confronting something he had not known he was missing, grieving the lost months even as he held proof of them in his arms. "What does she need?" he asked finally, his voice thick with unshed tears. "Tell me what she needs." The question shattered something in Maya's chest. Not what do I owe, not how much will this cost. What does she need? The subtle distinction spoke volumes about the man standing in her cramped apartment, holding their daughter as though she were made of spun glass and starlight. Junior designer. She's nobody, from nowhere, with nothing to offer except a convenient claim on your resources. Ethan felt rage kindle in his chest, hot and foreign. That girl is the mother of your granddaughter. And she's been doing everything alone for 6 months because I didn't know. Because my father's death and this company's chaos kept me from finding her. Your father built this company for you, Diane said, her voice hardening. Everything we've done, every sacrifice, has been to secure your future. I will not let you throw that away for some fleeting. Stop. The command came out sharper than he intended. Ethan stood, planting his hands on the conference table. I'm done living the life you planned for me. I'm done making decisions based on optics and strategy. I have a daughter, and I will be present in her life. If the board has a problem with that, I'll resign. The room fell silent. James Porter's eyebrows nearly disappeared into his hairline. Diane's carefully composed expression cracked, revealing something vulnerable beneath. You would walk away from everything? She asked quietly. I would walk toward something real. Meanwhile, across town, Maya faced her own disruptions. Jade arrived unannounced on Saturday morning, bursting through the apartment door with the kind of righteous fury only younger siblings could muster. Why didn't you tell me he showed up? She demanded, her voice carrying into the hallway. Carmen called me. She said Ethan Blake has been here every day this week. Maya, exhausted from another sleepless night, gestured helplessly toward the coffee maker. It happened fast. I'm still processing. Processing. Jade's voice climbed an octave. Maya, this man is a billionaire. He could take Lily away from you, tie you up in legal battles for years. You need a lawyer, you need protection. He's not like that. The words surprised Maya even as she spoke them. He's trying, Jade. He's really trying. As if summoned, the doorbell rang. Ethan stood in the hallway, baby carrier hanging awkwardly from one hand, diaper bag slung over his shoulder like a business briefcase. He had clearly attempted to research proper baby equipment and purchased accordingly, though his choices were comically high-end, a designer carrier that cost more than Maya's monthly rent. Jade positioned herself between Ethan and her sister, arms crossed. You're him. I am. Ethan set down his awkward cargo. And you must be Jade. Maya talks about you. Good things, I hope. Jade's tone carried warning. Because I'm the one who held her hair back during morning sickness. I'm the one who drove her to the emergency room at 2 a.m. when her blood pressure spiked. I'm the one who sat with her through labor because she was too proud to call anyone else. So if you're here to play daddy for a few weeks and then disappear, I suggest you leave now before Lily gets attached. The speech clearly cost Ethan something. He went pale, his jaw tightening as he absorbed the magnitude of what Maya had endured alone. I don't blame you for protecting her, he said quietly. I would do the same. But I'm not leaving. I'm going to mess this up, probably multiple times. I'm going to need help learning how to be what they need. But I'm not leaving. Jade studied him for a long moment, then turned to Maya. Your call, sis. Maya looked at Ethan, at the exhaustion in his eyes that mirrored her own, at the baby carrier he was clearly terrified of using incorrectly. Stay, she said. We'll figure it out together. What followed was a comedy of errors that somehow became the foundation of something real. Ethan attempted to change his first diaper while Carmen offered running commentary from the doorway. The tabs go in front, Mijo. Front. No, you're putting it on backwards. He held Lily with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts, terrified of supporting her head wrong or holding her too tightly. He researched bottles and formula with the same intensity he brought to merger acquisitions, filling pages of notes that made Maya laugh until she cried. You're overthinking it, she said, watching him measure formula powder with a digital scale. It's not a science experiment. Everything's a science experiment when you don't want to fail. He looked up at her, vulnerable in a way that cracked through his careful composure. I keep thinking about all the moments I've already missed. Her first smile, the first time she rolled over. I can't get those back. Maya's heart twisted. No, but you can be here for everything that comes next. The week ended with a photograph that would change everything again. A paparazzi photographer, tipped off by someone at Blake Industries, captured Ethan leaving Maya's building with a baby carrier strapped to his chest, Lily's tiny face barely visible above the expensive fabric. The image hit social media within hours, and by evening, the speculation had exploded into a full media frenzy. Maya's phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues, distant acquaintances, even high school friends she had not spoken to in years. Everyone wanted the story, wanted confirmation, wanted their piece of the scandal. She silenced her phone and held Lily closer, watching through her window as the first news van pulled up to the curb below. The private moment they had been trying to build was about to become very, very public. The paparazzi photo exploded across social media within hours. Maya watched helplessly as strangers dissected her life, debating whether she was a gold digger or victim. News vans surrounded her building by noon, cameras trained on her door. Diane Blake arrived with her lawyer at 7:30, bypassing Carmen's protests. She laid papers on Maya's coffee table, her voice cold and professional. $3 million. Relocate outside California, sign the NDA, and disappear gracefully. Maya stared at the check that could solve every financial worry, then met Diane's eyes with steel she didn't know she possessed. Get out. I'm trying to help. You're trying to buy me. Maya stood, Lily crying in the bedroom. I never asked Ethan for anything. This is my home, my life, built without your money. Now leave before I have Bobby escort you out. Diane's composure cracked when she heard Lily's cry, something flickering beneath the ice. But Maya had already disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door on the offer and the insult it represented. Ethan called 17 times. When Maya finally answered, his voice was ragged. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. No more hiding. The truth, all of it. Victoria's text arrived at 6 a.m. We need to talk. I'm not your enemy. They met at a quiet coffee shop where Victoria made a stunning confession. I'm relieved there's a reason to end our engagement. I'm in love with someone else, my business partner Helena. We've been hiding for 2 years. The revelation transformed Victoria from rival to ally. She offered media training, social navigation, and a solution. Ethan's lake house property where Maya and Lily could escape the media siege. Let them exhaust themselves at your apartment, Victoria advised. Meanwhile, you get space to breathe. Marcus Webb arrived at the lake house with his wife Rachel and their children, bringing normalcy and solidarity. Rachel immediately befriended Maya, sharing hard-won parenting wisdom. Jade visited and grudgingly admitted the setup was actually nice. Carmen arrived with food and fierce protection. Victoria brought Helena for dinner, their relationship a mirror of Ethan and Maya's hidden connection. Dr. Mitchell conducted a house call, noting Lily's thriving condition and improved co-parenting coordination. Over shared meals and quiet moments, an unlikely family began forming, bound not by blood or expectation, but by choice and authenticity. Diane arrived at the lake house unannounced on Thursday afternoon. Ethan positioned himself protectively between his mother and Maya, his voice cold. "You can't be here uninvited." "I came to meet my granddaughter," Diane said quietly, almost uncertain. "If you'll allow it." Maya, holding Lily, studied the woman who'd tried to buy her silence. "She's not a political problem. If you're here to really see her, okay. But the moment you start talking arrangements or optics, this ends." Lily reached toward Diane with a dimpled smile. The innocent gesture shattered something in the older woman. Diane took her granddaughter with trembling hands and sank onto the porch steps, tears spilling over. "She looks like Sarah," Diane whispered. "My daughter. Ethan's sister. She died 20 years ago in childbirth." The revelation explained everything. The control, the fear, the desperate need to manage every variable. Maya sat beside her, offering proximity as truce. "I'm sorry for your loss." "I was wrong about you," Diane admitted, her apology stiff but genuine. "Tell me about her. Tell me everything I've missed." As afternoon stretched to evening, Diane held Lily and listened to stories of milestones and moments, her fortress walls cracking to let in light she'd forbidden herself for 20 years. When she left, she embraced Ethan tightly. "I'm proud of you. Your father would be too." Healing, tentative and imperfect, had finally begun. With family tensions easing, the unglamorous work of merging lives began. Ethan attempted his first full night of baby duty and fell asleep standing up, earning Maya's reluctant respect. They argued about money and independence, their first real fight revealing they fought fair and apologized quickly. Bobby arrived to baby-proof Maya's apartment, teaching Ethan to use power tools with gruff patience. "Rich boys got soft hands," he muttered, watching Ethan struggle with a drill. But by afternoon's end, Bobby grudgingly admitted, "You're willing to learn. That counts for something." James Porter visited the lake house to discuss company concerns and found himself charmed by Lily, holding her while reviewing business documents. Victoria and Helena came for dinner, their easy partnership showing Maya what healthy relationships looked like. The domestic moments became their foundation. Ethan breaking Maya's coffee maker and learning about landlord negotiations. Maya teaching him to batch prepare baby food at 2 a.m. Carmen hosting a dinner where Diane and Maya's worlds collided over cooking techniques, the two women finding unexpected common ground in their love for Lily. Slowly, awkwardly, they were building something real. The hostile takeover attempt came without warning. A rival tech company exploited perceptions of Ethan's distraction, launching an aggressive bid while Blake Industries' stock wavered. The board convened in crisis mode, James Porter leading the charge. "You need to step back from your personal situation," Porter insisted. "Focus on saving the company." Diane, reverting to old patterns, suggested Maya and Lily stay hidden until the crisis passed. Maya overheard the pressure and offered to step back temporarily, but Ethan's face went pale. "Temporary is how I lost you before." That night, he experienced his first panic attack in years, gasping for breath in the darkness. Maya found him and grounded him through it, her steady presence pulling him back from the edge. The next morning, Ethan made his choice. He brought Maya and Lily to the emergency board meeting, Lily strapped to his chest in her carrier. The room fell silent as he entered. "This is my family," he said, his voice steady. "They're not a distraction. They're my motivation. If the board can't accept that, I'll resign." Marcus stood immediately. "I support this decision. A man who runs from personal responsibility can't be trusted with corporate responsibility." To everyone's shock, Diane stood next. "My son is right. I tried to control this situation out of fear. But authentic leadership requires authenticity in all areas of life." James Porter, moved by the transformation he'd witnessed, proposed a compromise strategy that maintained Ethan's involvement while addressing board concerns. Victoria used her media connections to reshape the narrative from distracted CEO to integrated leadership. The rival company's takeover attempt faltered. Ethan had chosen presence over appearance and won. Carmen took Lily overnight, insisting Maya and Ethan needed uninterrupted time. You two circle each other like nervous cats. Time to talk. They ordered takeout and sat in Maya's small kitchen, conversation stilted at first. Then Ethan asked about that night 18 months ago, what she remembered. Maya admitted she'd thought about him throughout her pregnancy, had written journal entries to Lily about her father. I kept the napkin with your number, Ethan confessed. But it became illegible, destroyed by my tears the night of my father's funeral. I tried so hard to find you. Maya showed him her journal, the hopeful entries about someday he would see them. Ethan broke down reading her words, the depth of what he'd missed and what she'd endured alone crashing over him. They acknowledged their feelings without rushing to define them. This wasn't a dramatic declaration, but a quiet conversation between two exhausted people who'd been building a relationship in reverse. Parenting before dating, partnership before romance. The evening ended with them falling asleep on the couch, not sexually, but intimately, wrapped in shared vulnerability. They woke to sunrise and Lily's return, Carmen smiling knowingly. So, the older woman asked. Maya and Ethan exchanged glances. We're figuring it out, Maya said softly. Together. 3 months later, the pieces had settled into an imperfect but authentic shape. Maya stood in the kitchen of the house they had chosen together, watching autumn sunlight stream through windows that overlooked a modest backyard. Not the mansion Ethan could have bought, not the cramped apartment Maya had struggled in, but something in between. A home that belonged to both of them, big enough for a family, small enough to feel real. Lily's first birthday party was scheduled for 2 o'clock, and the house already buzzed with preparation. Carmen commanded the kitchen, her homemade tres leches cake cooling on the counter while she directed traffic with the authority of a general. Diane arranged elegant decorations with surprising restraint, having learned through trial and error that less was sometimes more. The two women had formed an unlikely friendship over shared grandparenting. Their initial antagonism transformed into mutual respect born of loving the same child. More balloons or no? Diane asked, holding up a string of pastel colors. See, but not those expensive ones you brought last time, Carmen replied without looking up from her piping bag. The baby doesn't care if they cost $20 each. Maya smiled, remembering when she would have tensed at such exchanges. Now they felt like family, the comfortable bickering of people who had earned the right to be honest with each other. Ethan emerged from the nursery where he had been changing Lily, their daughter perched on his hip wearing a birthday dress that Jade had found at a consignment shop. He had learned, finally, that the most expensive option was not always the best one. That love showed up in presents, not price tags. She's already trying to eat the bow off her dress, he reported, intercepting Lily's hand before she could stuff tulle into her mouth. I think we're fighting a losing battle with keeping her clean today. That's what makes it a real party, Maya said, crossing to kiss Lily's forehead. Their daughter responded with a drooly grin that showcased 2 new teeth, her amber eyes sparkling with joy. The restructuring of Blake Industries had been announced 6 weeks ago. Ethan and Marcus now shared the CEO title, a radical move that had initially shocked the business world but was proving remarkably effective. Ethan worked from home 3 days a week, attended every pediatrician appointment, and had not missed a single bedtime routine since moving into the house. His calendar still filled with meetings and strategy sessions, but they no longer consumed him entirely. Maya's freelance business had grown beyond her expectations, thanks partly to connections Victoria had made, but mostly through her own talent finally getting the recognition it deserved. She had hired an assistant, a recent graduate who reminded her of herself at that age. The financial stability felt surreal after so many months of anxiety, but she had learned to accept it without guilt. She had earned this through skill and perseverance, not through Ethan's money. Guests began arriving shortly after 1. Bobby showed up first, carrying a toolbox with Ethan's name engraved on it. For when things break, he said gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. Because things always break, and you need to know how to fix them. Marcus and Rachel arrived with their children, who immediately swept Lily into their chaos of play. Victoria and Helena came bearing a ridiculously large stuffed elephant that made everyone laugh. James Porter surprised them all by attending, telling Ethan quietly that the company's stock was higher than it had been in 3 years. Turns out authenticity is good business, he admitted. Jade documented everything on her phone, already planning how this story would factor into her thesis on modern family structures. Dr. Mitchell confirmed what they all could see. Lily was thriving in a household filled with love from multiple directions. The party was beautiful chaos. Lily smashed her cake with gleeful abandonment, frosting coating her face and hands while adults laughed and cameras flashed. She opened presents with more interest in the wrapping paper than the toys inside. When everyone sang happy birthday, she clapped along, not quite on beat, but completely delighted. As the celebration wound down and guests began departing, Ethan found Maya on the back porch, Lily dozing against her shoulder. He sat beside them, close enough that their arms touched. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For the wrong chat." His smile was soft, genuine. "For giving me this life instead of the one I thought I was supposed to want." Maya leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "I think we gave it to each other." They sat in comfortable silence until Lily began to stir, signaling the end of nap time. As they stood to go inside, Ethan caught Maya's hand. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, not a demand, but an offering. Not because of Lily, not because it's expected. Because I want to build every tomorrow with you. Because you've shown me what real looks like, and I never want to go back to the performance. Maya's breath caught. She looked at this man who had shown up every single day, who had learned to change diapers and make bottles and sacrifice sleep without complaint, who had chosen authenticity over appearance, presence over pride. But she also knew herself well enough to know she needed to choose this for the right reasons, not from pressure or obligation. "Soon," she said, her voice steady. "Ask me again soon, and I think my answer will be yes." Ethan's smile was understanding, patient. "I can wait. I'm good at showing up." That evening, after everyone had left and Lily slept soundly in her crib, Maya and Ethan danced slowly in their living room. No music played except the rhythm of their breathing, their movements unhurried and intimate. Through the windows, stars emerged in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with its usual chaos. But here, in this house they had built together from the wreckage of assumptions and accidents, they swayed in peaceful silence. Their future remained unwritten, full of questions they had not yet answered and challenges they would face together. It was not perfect, but it was authentic. It was not the fairy tale either of them had imagined, but it was real. And real, they had both learned, was infinitely more valuable than perfect. Lily stirred in her room, making the soft sounds that signaled she would wake soon. Maya and Ethan moved together toward their daughter, their hands linked, their steps synchronized after months of learning each other's rhythms. The wrong chat message had changed everything. And everything, against all odds, had become exactly right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.